Welcome back, YouTubers, family, and friends. Today's hot topic video is about rust repair. And rust repair, wow. I wouldn't say that it's complicated work, but it's definitely a lot of work. And obviously it's something that you have to do before you can do any other steps in your van build. So you definitely want to make sure that you have your perseverance hat pulled down snug on your head before you start. So let's start this video by taking a look at the requisite before picture and some of the tools and equipment that I actually use to do the work. So here's our before picture. This was taken immediately after the original floor was pulled out of the van and after I had wiped everything up so we could actually see what's rust and what's dirt. You can see rust in some of the deeper troughs and then a little bit of rust around the wheel wells and also the rear threshold panel. Next, let's take a look at some of the tools and equipment that I used. Rubber gloves, these were important during the chemical apply. Goggles worn during heavy grinding. A wire brush, respirator. Various other wire brushes and discs that I used with my drill and my grinder. My dad's Dremel, thank you Dad, and my drill with a wire brush attached. And then last of all, the heavy hitter, the grinder. Next, let me give you a rundown of what the high-level steps were. There was general preparation, which was a lot of cleaning, removing parts. There was rust removal, and this was probably the longest step. Grinding, vacuuming, grinding, vacuuming, grinding, vacuuming. There was the chemical apply that I did, number of chemicals, and I'll talk about that, and I'll share those products. Once that was done, I patched the holes, and then there was a number of finishing touches that I did when everything else was completed. So let's take a look at the very first step, and that simply was wiping up the van floor after I had removed the original floor. And the water didn't remove everything, so I actually ended up having to use a solvent to remove some of the adhesive that was used to hold the floor in place, so that was the next step. It destroyed a pair of gloves, rubber gloves, but it got the job done. That's all that mattered. Once I started the rust repair in my mind, I categorized it into two different buckets, easy rust and hard rust. Hang on a second, let me turn down the radio. So as I was saying, there was easy rust and hard rust. The easy rust was something that I could just get off easily with a wire brush or with a bristle brush on my drill. I could get easily down to bare metal. The hard rust, we'll talk about that later. Let's take a look right now at the easy rust. So what I'm working on right now are just some smaller rust spots within the van. And what I'm really trying to do is I'm using my wire brush just on my drill. And again, these are kind of lighter spots. They're not deep rust, topical. So I'm grinding them down to bare metal with my drill, and it's actually pretty easy. And then once I get them ground down, I'm vacuuming the floor, wiping up the floor, and then I'm touching them up with this Rust-Oleum. One of the things that's important to know, I guess, about the van build, if you're not familiar with this process, is the floor that I'm working on right now doesn't have to be perfect. The main intention here is really to make sure that we nip the rust in the bud. So it doesn't have to be pretty, and that's because it's going to be covered up with a different floor in the future. So really just focusing on that rust. So I'm going to show you a little bit about what I'm doing here so you can kind of see. So there's all these various spots. This is the deepest trough. It runs down the middle of the van, and obviously that's a place where water collects. So, you know, I've taken off a lot more there. But again, just really trying to go down to bare metal, you know, and then I'll vacuum and wipe it down after that, and then I'll apply the rust coating. One of the things that I learned from watching some other people's videos is it's uber important to make sure that you're vacuuming up and wiping up all the shards that result from, you know, the brushing motion, the removal of the rust. It's incredible how fast rust actually occurs. I did come out a while ago, you know, a day or so ago, and I worked on some of this, and already I had to retouch up some of those spots. So lesson learned again. Every time I work on it now, I'm actually gonna, you know, make sure that I'm really vacuuming well, that I wipe it down, and that I also spray at the same time, do my paint spraying at the same time. So anyway, that's my quick tip. I'm no rust expert, but this is some of the easy stuff, and I was just looking for a little gratification, so I started with some of those things. The hard rust was hidden in two places, under the rear threshold of the van and around the wheel wells. Hang on a second, let me turn down the radio. Okay, in this video you'll see how I fixed the hard rust around the threshold. The wheel well rust repair will be a separate video. The floor actually turned out to look really good and I hate to cover it up, but that's exactly what we're going to do in the future here. But before we get too far ahead of ourselves, let's take a look at the hard rust and how we repaired it. I'm getting ready now to start on some of the heavier rust in the van. It's toward the rear of the van where the doors actually close, so let's take a look. In order to get ready for really working on the rust, I think I'm going to take out this piece. It took me a second to figure out how to remove the threshold. It basically is held in place by these 1-inch long plastic plugs. If you put a screwdriver down into the hole of the plug and pry up, they actually come out pretty easily. Two more. Okay, this is the heavier area of rust in the van. Like I said, everything else was pretty much surface rust. So today I'm going to start working on these and try to see if I can get those cleaned up a little bit. I'm going to be very careful. There is a spot here that's pretty thin and it went through. Of course we can patch that, but I'm going to try to use some heavier duty tools today. There's my my grinder, and I've got, you know, all of my other tools here: wire brush, goggles, gloves, respirator, and I've got my Dremel kit. So this is the before, and we'll work a little bit and then we'll share the after.
You can't stop me now, can't stop me now. My feet have come too far for you to tie them to the ground. You can't stop me now, can't stop me now. Set my sights on where I'm going at and turn it back around. You can't stop me now. You can't stop me. All the blood, sweat, and sacrifice. Oh, I paid the dearest price. And no shortcuts here for destiny.
I have to say that I'm super happy with how this is going. Look at, we're down to bare metal here. You know, I'm still working on some of this, but amazingly, even these are coming clean. So looking good. Very, very happy. Here's a few still photos of the progress, including a worn out disc. I've had all I can take. I can't take it no more. Me and Popeye. I have had enough of grinding and sanding, vacuuming, grinding, sanding, vacuuming. I am calling it quits. You get to a point and then the chemicals have to do the rest of it. So that's where we are now. Let's take a look. So here is the van. I have ground, and you can see a lot of spots here. I've actually already fixed a number of them. The rest of these have all been ground out. They are ready to be treated with some of this heavier duty stuff that we'll talk about in a second. You can see the wheel wells. I have done as much as I can there, gotten down to bare metal as much as I can. Same with this one. I know they look terrible, but they're actually pretty clean. And that's a spot that I've already treated. But if we look around the edge of the van, this is where things were really bad. I have really gotten down to bare metal as much as I can. That's a tender spot right there. I'm going to patch that. But you can see I've gotten down to bare metal pretty good. This was real tricky in here just because there's, you know, all the latch work. So it was hard to get in there. I used my Dremel a lot. But pretty good job, I think, getting down to metal as much as I can. So, I know it still looks bad, but at this point, like I said, we're going to let the chemicals do the work. What they tell you with these products is that all you have to do is remove the loose rust. I've looked at a lot of videos and just decided that I was really going to try to get as much off as I could. Once again, you know, the preparation is the hardest part, so I did spend a lot of time grinding and sanding. And hopefully that'll pay off. Like I said, I really tried to get down to bare metal as much as I could, and now we are at the point where the chemicals have to do the rest, but we'll see what happens. So I did just do my final vacuum. What I'm going to do now is just wipe this all out with just water and let it dry. Then the next thing I'm going to do is apply the greaser cleaner. And that, you know, that takes a little while. All of this is about a 20-minute process for each one of these things. It's a 3-step process. So first I'll do the degreaser across the whole floor, and then there's this product called Metal Prep. And that also takes quite a while, and I'll show each one of these steps as I go through them. And then finally, this is the rust preventative that'll go over the top. And just to forewarn you, that's black, so that'll be interesting. The floor will be black when it's done, and maybe I'll paint white over it. I don't know, we'll see. But at any rate, just want it to protect the rust. So that's it. Okay, I've completed step 1, which was just to wipe the van out with water. The van has dried, and now I'm on to step 2, which is POR-15 cleaner degreaser, and you mix it four parts to 1. So I've used a cup, and I've got markers in there. You can see the lines that I marked, and I've got everything ready to go. A couple other things about POR-15 that they recommend is that you wear a respirator. So I'll definitely be, you know, these are heavy duty chemicals, so I'll definitely be wearing my respirator as well as rubber gloves. So the process for this step is to wipe it on and then get water and rinse it off. So for step 3, here's the product that I'm using again. And you can put it on a number of different ways. You can spray it on, you can paint it on. But the interesting thing about it is you have to keep it wet for 20 minutes and then you have to wipe it off again. So I have loaded it into a Folex carpet cleaner bottle. And once again, I'm going to wear my gloves and my respirator because these are pretty strong chemicals. And I'm going to focus mostly on some of these spots where there's bare metal. It does say if you get it on any painted metal, you should get it off, you know, right away, or not right away, but make sure you get it off. I don't really care what happens here, even though I've touched those up, but I'm definitely gonna, you know, really focus on these areas and then around the wheel wells and in there where I've really ground down. So for the next 20 minutes, I'm going to keep this wet, and then I'm going to do a final wipe down with clean water to rinse it off, and we'll see how that looks.
You can't stop me now. Can't stop me now. My feet have come too far for you to tie 'em to the ground. You can't stop me now. Can't stop me now.
Knee pads. I bought these after I was done with this rust repair. I'm putting this in here so that you can buy them before you start your rust repair project. The last step now is to apply this POR-15, and I'm going to do it with a paintbrush. And one of the things that I watched the video from the vendor, and one of the things that they say to do is actually to put it on lightly. So what I'm going to do, because it spreads nice and even. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to hit some of those hot spots, like that spot right there and that spot right there and some of those. I don't know how much this is going to cover. I'd like to do my whole floor, and it does recommend 2 coats. So what I'm going to do is hit some of those hot spots first to make sure that I get that covered first. And then if I have enough, I'll come back and do the full floor. So I hit all of the spots that are, you know, where the heaviest rust around the wheel wells, a few spots up front there. And this product is pretty cool. They tell you to put it on, as I said in my prior comments, put it on in thin coats because it really, it fills in itself. It, you know, it actually seeps in and sets in and it ends up with this high gloss finish. So this is just 1 coat. I'll definitely have enough to, I'll hit these spots again, and then I'll probably just do the whole floor just because I have enough of it to use. All right, I have just finished putting a coat of the rust protectant on the full floor of the van. This is again 170 Sprinter van, and the product that I'm using is POR-15. Some people call it POR-15. And what I did, if you remember earlier, I definitely wasn't sure how far this was going to go. It's a quart can. So what I did was I hit all my hot spots once, and then I went back and hit them again a second time, and I still had, you know, some coating left. So I went ahead and did the whole floor. And I think once this dries, what I'm going to do is touch it up again. I've probably honestly got about a third or a quarter of the can left, and I'm going to clean up some of the edges. I'll hit those hot spots again. They recommend 2 coats. It seems like, you know, 3 has got to be better. So we're going to try a couple things and see what it looks like. But it looks great. The other thing that I'll say about this product is you can just put it on. You don't have to be particular about spreading it evenly. It's actually, it flows really well, so it just fills in itself. I did use, the first time I used a bristle brush, and I actually really liked that a lot better. The second time I used a sponge brush, I felt like the sponge brush, it was starting to deteriorate at the end, and it sucked up all the fluid, and it just became a little bit ineffective. I don't think that it would have lasted much longer. But anyway, that looks pretty good to me. I'm checking it out myself, and you can take a gander too, and we'll see how that goes. Hopefully the product actually eliminates or stops rust. Here's a photo of the floor with the final coat of POR-15. POR-15 is a product that you can paint over, so once it was dry, I actually taped up all the edges around the floor of the van and spray painted the whole floor flat black. And I did that just so I'd have a fully finished look. To close out this video, I've put in a few pictures in sequential order showing the process from start to finish. As always, if you enjoyed this video and you think I'm doing a great job, leave a like and subscribe to my channel. We'll see you again soon. Bye-bye.
Can't stop me now.